Hi, I'm Liam Eldred, and this is my orientation presentation. These are my employers: Chris Eldred, my mum, Katie Eldred, and my dad, Stephen Eldred. Okay, today I'm just going to go over employee safety in the warehouse. To start with, just going to go over some workshop objectives. Recognizing the hazards and evaluating the risks and controlling those risks. So that's just the layout of what we're going to go over. Just first, we want to talk about eliminating hazards. This comes with understanding the materials, handling the hazards. And then second, talk about minimizing these hazards. And then always how to control these hazards, but this is all very important and is a general layout. Our second objective will be to avoid any injuries, especially long-term ones, like musculoskeletal problems. This can involve nerves, tendons, muscles, any supporting structure, and this comes from lifting things incorrectly, and later as we get on, I'll show you how to lift things properly. A lot of the most common injuries are accumulative trauma, which, as I said, comes from lifting things incorrectly. This often comes in the lower back when you're lifting boxes and your back's not straight, and tendonitis. Let's talk about recognizing these hazards. You want to assess the situation, look around you, see what's on the floor. You don't want anything you could trip on, because you don't want any rolled ankles are also a very common injury. You've got to identify those risks, which comes with looking around, and anticipate what could go wrong. Then we're going to talk about evaluating these risks. You've got to think when you're lifting something, how heavy is it going to be? How far are you going to take it? Is it too large for you? Can you reach around it? You don't want something you can't grip onto because you'll drop it on your foot. And the warehouses are very large, just so you can picture it, almost 2 football fields. So you don't want to be carrying something too heavy that far, because again, you'll probably hurt yourself. You've got to plan what you're doing. So you got to think about on the last slide. You got to think about how far you're going and everything. Also think about, can I avoid handling material? If there's a dolly nearby, that could help. And how to use the proper body mechanics. Essentially, actually, right now would be a good time to talk about how to lift something properly. It's like weightlifting. Some of you might have been athletes and gone to the gym every now and then. It's essentially a deadlift. You want to only lift with your legs, so don't bend your back. Keep your back straight. Bend with your knees, and the same up and down. And sorry if I'm not going too low. I just don't want to rip my pants, but I'm sure you get the point. Next. There's plenty of safe equipment in the warehouse, such as dollies, pallet jacks. We probably won't talk about forklifts yet, because none of you have been trained for that, but we will go over it slightly. Think about your limitations. If you're a big guy, you could probably handle something bigger. Little guys, you should probably think about using the safety equipment around. If you need assistance, don't be afraid to ask. We're all friends in the warehouse, so no one's going to say no. As I went over before, we want to talk about safety when lifting heavy objects. Make sure the floor is dry, because we are an oil company, so you don't want to be standing in oil while lifting something, because you probably end up doing the splits. I'm sure you don't want that. Make sure you've got good grip, like I said before. You don't want to be dropping anything on yourself. And when you think of these, think of it as a checklist. As you start, you have to checklist, check everything off. That way you know you've thought about it and you have the plan in your head. Keep things close to you. You don't want to be holding anything up here, because that strains your muscles a lot more. As I said, bend with your knees with a straight back, and let your legs do the work. Don't twist. You often get lower back injuries from that. And make sure you take things slow. You don't want to do anything too fast. That's how you pop something. And as I said before, keep your back straight when putting a load down as well. It's the same going up and down. Dollies. The dollies are probably one of the most common pieces of equipment used in the warehouse. Make sure when you're tipping it, you don't tip it too far, or you don't have it too far up, because if you're going around a corner too quick, the boxes might come off, and then you'll damage what our goods, which is like, the higher ups won't like that because you're losing them money. And also, if you're going through a door, make sure you can fit. You don't want to be hitting your hands on doors. And make sure you don't obscure your vision. You don't want to be stacking the boxes too high so you can't see where you're going because you'll run into someone or something. And make sure if you're going down a ramp, you don't get your momentum too far ahead of you, because you don't want the box running off without you. As we always say, we try to push things much more than we pull. Pulling is you can't see where you're going if you're going backwards. If you're going down a ramp, often the dolly will overpower you and you'll just get run over. As I said, avoid walking backwards. And when loading, make sure nothing hangs off the edge. You don't want to be clipping anything. When you're moving, as I said before, when you're moving a dolly through a doorway, always check no one's on the other side of the door. I often open the door before I go through. Don't just push the thing through the door, because you don't know what's on the other side of the door. And as I said, you don't want to be clipping your hands on the door because the dollies can be quite heavy. And avoid using a dolly in a tight space, because you do have to tip it over. So you want to be comfortable with the angle it's at. You don't want to be up here because you don't have as much strength up there. Powered vehicles, that's as I was saying, we're talking about the pallet jacks and the forklifts. Don't operate anything without any training. You need training to use these. Like the forklifts can be very dangerous. They lift very heavy things of high racking, and you don't want that falling on people because it can end up with fatalities or major injuries. And yeah, we will train you as the year goes on. We will periodically review that to make sure you haven't lost any of the knowledge we gave you. We give you a lot of safety equipment. We pay for your steel-toed boots, which are very important because you don't want to be losing any toes from heavy drums or barrels and getting your toes run over by a forklift. Also, we have safety lenses. If you're using anything that might have pellets in it and it explodes, you don't want to get a pellet in the eye and lose your vision. Also, we have gloves for grip, and also if you're using a material, cleaning up oil, most of the chemicals are corrosive, so you don't want to get that on your skin because you might get some red itchy skin. It's just not pleasant. But they're optional, but I recommend for hazardous materials you use gloves, and for grip that's more optional. It's up to you if you want to be able to feel what you're holding better. And also we have masks because, as I said before, we have some hazardous materials for cleaning up oil, and when you're re-racking goods, it can be dusty, so you don't want to get that in your lungs. Any questions?
Nope.
I must have done a good job. Thank you.